Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday show. It's been, well, quite the week, hasn't it? Lots to get into this morning. As Donald Trump delivers a jolt that shocked the global economy, the Liberal Democrats say it's time to stop playing nice with America. The party's been holding its Scottish conference in Inverness this weekend. I'll be joined by leader Alex Cole-Hamilton to talk Trump, tactics and the new Tesla tax they're proposing. It seems to have been quite the occasion in the Highlands. The party unveiled its newest recruit to delegates with a theatrical flourish. Jamie Green, a long-serving Tory MSP, of course, walked out on his old party and entered stage right to an ovation, telling the Lib Dems he'd swapped sides. What drama. But why did he do it? He'll tell me. And, as if that wasn't enough, the longest-serving party leader in modern Scottish history has announced he was stepping down this week. So, how does Patrick Harvie reflect on the pretty remarkable journey he's taken with his Scottish Greens? He'll be here too. And after all that, it is over to Graham Stewart on the radio and on BBC Sounds. Hi, Graham.
Good morning, Martin. A double whammy of rising costs for businesses from today. We've got employers' national insurance contributions going up. We had Donald Trump's tariffs taking effect from yesterday, so we'll be getting the views of a couple of businesses. And with all that's happening in America, including tougher immigration checks, are fewer Scots deciding to take their holidays in the USA? We'll dig into all of that, and we'll have our usual rummage through the Sunday papers with our panel of guests.
Excellent, Graham. More from Graham on the radio at 10:30. Right, let's get on with the show. Yeah, two party leaders and a defector coming up for you in the next half hour. What a way to start a Sunday. Tumultuous change all round this week then. What do you make of it all? Let us know. The hashtag on social media, as ever, BBC Sunday Show. The story of the week, probably the year, possibly the decade, was Donald Trump's proclamation that America won't be taken for suckers anymore. Standing in the White House Rose Garden, armed with a large list printed on a huge piece of cardboard, he stuck a characteristically curious figure. But while the delivery might have seemed slightly absurd, be in no doubt, the content of the president's speech was massively consequential. In a curious twist of timing, it all came as Tartan Week got underway. That's, of course, the annual transatlantic pilgrimage attended by high-profile Scots to promote trade and soft power in the USA. So what's the feeling this time round as America effectively turns its back on the outside world? Our correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart is in New York and sent us this overnight.
Welcome to New York City, which is looking very Scottish. Even the rainy weather is looking quite Scottish. Tartan Week culminates in this parade they're just preparing for. We're expecting 3,500 marchers, 28 bands from across the world, even over 100 dogs, part of the Canine Celtic Brigade. It's going to be led by the actor Alan Cumming, who's the Grand Marshal. He said he wants this to be something of a protest against Donald Trump's America as well. More on that in a moment, because business comes out for this week as well. Essentially, this is all soft power for them to get them into the right boardrooms, to get them meetings with CEOs that they can use to try and drum up investment in Scotland. The politicians take part in that too. First Minister John Swinney is out here. Ian Murray, the UK government's Secretary of State for Scotland, he's out here too. They're trying to encourage investment in Scotland. But of course, we have a half Scottish president, Donald Trump, who's disrupted global trades with his tariffs. That's making their task all the more difficult. It's going to be more expensive for importers here to bring in Scottish goods like whisky, like salmon. We've been hearing from importers who might even pivot away from those kind of produce. But remember, for most people this afternoon, it's about celebrating Scottish culture, it's about celebrating Scottish links. It's not about tariffs and the stock exchange. It's about the contribution that Scotland has made to the United States of America, and I'm going to go join them in that.
Well, at least somebody's having fun. But how do you handle relations with the United States just now? That is the big question that politicians everywhere are wrestling with. Here, most parties seem to favour keeping America on side in the hope perhaps that a better deal can still be ground out. Not, though, the Liberal Democrats. They are advocating a firm anti-Trump stance, a clear message that he is no friend of ours, possibly even a new world order to move things forward, a coalition of the willing, their leader Sir Ed Davey called it. Well, the party's Scottish leader, Alex Cole-Hamilton, is wish with me now in the studio, fresh from the Scottish Lib Dems conference. Good morning.
Morning, Martin.
Ed Davey apparently coaching your colleagues in Westminster this week, just banging that mantra into them, this coalition of the willing that he wants to assemble or to join. Has he been bending your ear about it?
Well, he doesn't need to bend my ear. I absolutely share his views on this. Listen, the special relationship with America is old enough and strong enough to withstand the measured criticism of political leaders in these islands. And if you've read The Art of the Deal, which is Donald Trump's playbook, he sees any kind of capitulation or kowtowing as weakness, and he will roll over us. That's why we need to stand up to him. That's why Ed's called for the coalition of the willing on an economic basis with our friends in Europe. And we do need to stand up to Trump.
So you kind of relish the thought then, do you, of a trade war with our biggest individual trading partner?
Well, I don't relish that at all. It's going to cause economic hardship to my constituents, everyone across these islands. But it has been brought to us. This is happening whether we like it or not. So I think we do need to stand up to him. That starts with things like staying tough on things like the digital services tax in particular, something I'm worried that the UK government are going to try and ease or appease Donald Trump with, whereas actually we know social media giants haven't been paying their way in the UK. They cause a lot of the online harm that we see in our young people. So that's one of the things Lib Dems want to see.
We'll get on to that in a minute, but I mean, I would imagine there are business owners who export to the States watching this, listening to this morning with their head in their hands saying, no, 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 don't. This is just the start. We can negotiate this down. We can get a better deal than the ones on the table. And at the very start, in week one, you're saying, nope, it's finished. Turn our back on him. He's done.
I don't think anybody's saying we turn our back on him.
It's really harmful to Scottish business, that attitude.
Listen, so we have to keep America in the mix, not least because we want to keep America in the war and helping the armed forces of Ukraine hold back the expansionist Russian tyranny that they have been doing for the last 3 years. But also, you know, in friendship, sometimes you need to take a friend aside and saying, look, you are overstepping the mark here and standing up for British interests. Standing up for British interests is also standing up to the bullies. That is the new kind of British patriotism that Liberal Democrats are spearheading. It's about standing up for our friends in Canada in particular. I'm a Canadian citizen. This is hugely, hugely depressing to me that we're seeing these old alliances being torn up. Now is the time to take a stand. If we don't take a stand, Donald Trump will take advantage of that. He'll sense weakness and he will roll all over
a specific tax on Tesla cars, just to kind of poke Elon Musk a bit. How's that helpful?
That is a suggestion, one of many
from
suggestions.
Your leader?
Of course, and it's not. I mean, it's not trite. It's not a joke. It's a real proposition because I think, you know, this is a man who claims to understand the language of being tough. Well, sometimes you've got to be tough in return. That's not picking a fight with American people. A lot of people in America are aghast, are horrified by the actions of the Trump presidency and in whose name he does not act. But now is the time to take a stand. Doesn't mean that we're tearing up the special relationship. We will always have friends and allies in America, but we do have to be tough.
And your colleagues at party conference this weekend backed a motion to grant special fast-tracked visas to Americans who are fleeing the Trump regime. You agree with that, do you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a policy of my party now, and we have to recognise that it is a very uncomfortable space to be, particularly if you're in any one of minority groups in America, whether if you're in the LGBT plus community in particular, whether you're religious or ethnic minorities, they are on the verge of persecution. We are seeing...
We're not fast-tracking LGBT people from Iraq or Iran or any of those countries. We're not fast-tracking people from Myanmar or South Sudan or war-torn, disaster-struck areas, but you want to fast-track people from the United States of America.
This is, I think, a moment in time, Martin, where we have to recognise that right now there is a pressure on, you know, the sort of freedom and values that we as liberals would want to see the world over. And in America in particular, the urgency and the rate at which things are collapsing and the what we thought we knew about America is just unprecedented. So yes, of course, and actually those are really important issues, and those countries that you've described are really important. We'll address each of them separately, but right now, when we're focusing on Donald Trump, the threat he means to the world order, to the safety of the fighting men and women of Ukraine who are holding back the tide of Russian tyranny,
then yes, we will need to stand up to it.
Right. How far do you want to go with all this? Full reunification with the EU? I've lost track. Every time you're on here, there's a different position on the EU, I think, from your party. What do you want to do now?
Listen, the current international tension demands a new alliance with Europe, and that means from the Baltics to the Balearics, and from the Straits of Gibraltar to the Straits of Denmark. We need to unify in terms of military and strategic considerations, but also on an economic basis as well. We're not talking about re-entry to the European Union. That's not for now. And also it would exclude, I think, the other nations of the world who think as we do, whether that's Canada, whether that's Japan, who have signalled their intent and their willingness to be part of
customs union, freedom of movement.
Look, we absolutely believe that things like, making it easier for young people to travel and live and work. Well, it's a first step, Martin. We've had this conversation many times before. Liberal Democrats believe that our best future lies lockstep with our European neighbours. And
these are tiny incremental changes you're talking about at the moment.
But at the
nothing
big. But
not a new world order.
If you consider, the journey we've been on, my goodness, things are changing at a rate of knots, and those uncertainties command and demand closer alliance with our nearest European neighbours. If we can't rely on that long peace, that Pax Americana that America has underwritten for so long, if that's being torn up, then we need something to fill that void. And my goodness, it's right there. It's staring us in the face, and our European neighbours would welcome us into that new alliance with open arms.
You're big on new alliances, aren't you? You're joining up with the First Minister in his call to find a way to freeze the far-right, brackets, Reform UK party, out of Scottish politics. They are, depending on which poll you look at the moment, possibly the third biggest party in Scotland. That's not very liberal or democratic.
So let me be clear. I've been invited to a summit by the First Minister to talk about the rise of extremism in our politics. I go to
he specifically said he's talking about Reform UK.
Let me answer.
Let's not.
So let me answer. I go to that in good faith, because if you, as a party leader, get an invitation for the First Minister to a summit, it's courteous to attend. But I would take a very dim view about efforts to stifle or lock out a democratically elected politician. Now, I find the views of the Reform Party reprehensible, but I plan to defeat those views in open ground. I don't think it's democratic to say, to try and starve them out of debate.
He said that's what this summit is all about.
And I will go to that summit and tell him that I disagree.
It's all about tribal, this, isn't it?
Well, exactly. So I disagree. And I will tell him, listen, the forces of the right can be defeated, they should be defeated, but they need to be defeated in open ground. And that means meeting them on any field of debate that you so choose. Right.
One of the other big issues that you're campaigning on at the moment is mental health, social media, the harms that can be done to that. Esther Jai and Roxy Longworth, both campaigners for online safety, told Laura Kuenssberg in the programme preceding this on the television this morning, they don't want to see the online safety bill watered down in a bid to curry favour in negotiations with Donald Trump. They said the suggestion itself is just shocking. Your party, as I say, is big on mental health, big on the impact of social media, mobile phones, all that. What do you want? What more are you now asking the Scottish Government to do? We've all heard about adolescence, this new drama that has been game-changing apparently. Time for big action. What happens now?
Well, the last question I had of the First Minister in the Scottish Parliament, I asked him about adolescence. I asked about the fact that incident for incident, we are matching the awful trajectory of last year's record-breaking year on schools violence, and that is in large part caused by online harms, online bullying,
so what do you want to see
abuse.
done?
Firstly, Liberal Democrats, far from watering down the online safety bill, we want it implemented in full. We want to go further than that. We want to triple what's called the online digital services tax. That's a tax paid by the social media giants like Facebook, like Twitter, Instagram, which, frankly, they haven't been paying their
notoriously difficult organisations from whom to extract tax.
They are already
paying
these taxes. So this is a tax we can increase. And, that mechanism, that money
is coming in.
How does
that save children?
Anyway, because we would immediately use that money to invest in mental health, particularly for children and young people, to unpack the damage and unpick the damage.
But why not cut out the harm? Why not attack the cause, not the symptom?
I think that's a valid question, and certainly something we're going to be bringing forward policy towards in our manifesto around the use of mobile phones in schools.
What about an age limit on mobile phones?
Well, I think we've got to sort of unpack all of these and look at all of these through various lenses. But so mobile phone use in school absolutely is a toxic influence and is a source of lots of online bullying and online harm.
So ban them?
But so too, well, I think we might be getting there, and this is something our party's going to be discussing in the coming months and weeks, and I think it's a consensus that's emerging across the country. But it's
Would you like to see them banned?
Well, I think personally, I think the time is there that in classes that we might be entering that space.
It's kind of happening already, that.
It's kind of happening,
but radical.
But also I'm anxious about making teachers the policemen of that, and without legislation behind that, it's harder for them. But let me just finish by saying this. It's not just about mobile phone use, it's about what we offer to children and young people to fill their time outside of school. And that, for me, is a former youth worker of 19 years, is youth work, about that positive adult relationship that isn't either a parent or a teacher. We are missing that in so many areas of our society.
We will watch with interest to see what you come up with next on that. Let me move on. The really big thing to happen at your conference this weekend was the unveiling of your newest party member. Jamie Green, of course, famously defected from the Tories a couple of days ago. All very theatrical. You told your party conference, no, he's not going to join the Liberal Democrats in the future because he joined us this morning and on he strode. Well, not to be outdone, we are unveiling him once again. Here he is on the set. Welcome to the Sunday Show, Jamie Green. Hello.
Good morning.
Right, quite the new romance this. Who made the first move?
The new romance? Yeah. That's one word to describe it. I think if you look at my social media, there are plenty of other descriptions of it. No, I mean, a lot's happened in the last couple of days. It's certainly been a tumultuous few days, to say the least. When I went to the party conference yesterday, I think my opening words were, I'm not sure who's more surprised to see me here, the audience or myself. So things had moved very, very quickly. I mean, I only took the decision to resign the whip from the Scottish Conservatives on Wednesday evening. And then 12 hours later, I'd posted my resignation letter.
Why? What prompted that decision? Why had it become intolerable?
I think intolerable is probably the right word, actually. I think that's a good word to use. I think over a period of time I'd felt increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of travel of the Scottish Conservatives, the language that was being used by their press office, by their social media presence, and also the language being used in the chamber. I felt deeply uncomfortable with.
Such as? What in particular upset you?
Well, let's take some recent examples. There's been a building of a narrative, in my view, of a shift in the party from the party that I joined in 2016, of what was a fairly moderate centrist party, on the right of centre, admittedly, increasingly to the right in tone and language. But, let's take an example. Sticking the words dangerous ideology before something, okay? When you're talking, for example, about the LGBT community of which I'm part of, that doesn't sit comfortably with me. I don't deny that. It affects you personally. I'm not alone in all of this, and everything I said in my resignation letter I stand by. But what's important here is I am not alone in this. I'm just perhaps the more public person to say it. The amount of messages I've had in the last 24 hours from Conservative activists and voters and members, and even members of staff who support my decision and feel the same way as I do, I think sums up a much wider issue in the Conservative Party.
I mean, half a dozen of your fellow Conservatives have moved the other way. They've left and they've moved to Reform because the party presumably isn't of the right enough for them at the moment. Are the Scottish Conservatives really moving in that direction, or was this about you finding a safer home for your politics, so somewhere where you would be more likely to be re-elected, perhaps?
Well, my politics haven't changed since I was elected. Anyone who's followed me, my local constituents in the west of Scotland, some half an hour from here, know exactly where I stand. My politics have not changed. That's why I was re-elected in 2021. The party has shifted. And it's interesting you talk about that split. I think you're right, there is a split. There's a portion of the Conservative Party who want to go further to the right to tackle reform. And I think the party are going in that direction. But where does that leave everyone else? And that's where I think there's a growing amount of people in the Conservative Party who feel increasingly uncomfortable with its direction of travel.
Are you still then a centre-right politician? I think your politics haven't shifted.
They haven't, no.
So you're still centre-right?
Yeah.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, your party is now home to people of the centre-right. You comfortable with that?
Yes, and there are many others who are taking the same decision as Jamie. Look, we're a family in the Lib Dems, and our fundamental values...
Broader church than you used to be now.
Well, no, not at all.
A broader church than the Scottish Conservatives are. If people like me are leaving the Conservatives, they have to have a good think about that. There are two ways in which they could have reacted to the events of the past week. The one is the direction of travel they've taken, which is double down, batten down and go on the attack. The other option would have been the better and more beneficial one, and that's to have a period of reflection. Why is the party losing people who joined up in 2016 under Ruth Davidson?
You wrote an open letter to Russell Finlay telling him why you were leaving. Have you had a reply?
I'll check my inbox, but I don't think so. But,
Have you heard anything from him since you left?
No. But that's not surprising. I mean, it's been a difficult few days for everyone. But some of my colleagues are commenting on social media, and the sort of reaction I'm getting, I think, completely vindicates that I've made the right decision.
And, I mean, you sat tight through Douglas Ross, through Boris Johnson, like many of your party colleagues. You tried to explain away the policies that they had implemented, Liz Truss, all of that. You've been through a hell of a tumultuous period in the Conservative Party. But this is the moment that it all became too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you were aware, last week I spoke in the motion of condolence, and I went home that night, I think quite upset in general about the recent events. And it crystallised my mind. I knew in my heart of hearts that I was either going to hit a wall or a crossroads. I'm not sure which one I actually reached.
This was motion of condolence for Christina McKelvey.
Yeah, but, you know, and I think I said in that, and this really is where it strikes true to me, is I think you have to follow your instincts and go with your moral compass on this. And I knew in my heart of hearts I couldn't go on the way I was. And there's so many people in the Conservative Party at the moment who are good people, who feel the same as I do. I know that because my inbox is full of them.
Are there other people going to move? Are there other Tory MSPs who are thinking of moving in the same direction as you?
You'd have to ask them.
Have you spoken to any, Alex?
Well, no. I think this weekend's about Jamie. Look, there are clearly, and Jamie will tell you...
Have you spoken to other Tories who want to defect to your party?
I have several friends in the Conservative Party, and of course, you know, I put an arm around some of them who feel, as Jamie does, that they don't recognise the Conservative Party anymore. The lurch to the right, the punching down on minorities, the nasty party that has returned in force.
I'll tell you what they are saying is there's a growing disquiet amongst people who are like-minded, who feel the sort of politics and enact the sort of politics that I've been for the last couple of years. And I think they're increasingly uncomfortable, but I understand it's difficult to say so publicly. I know how difficult it's been to bring this to the public fore, and being the first is never easy.
OK. We're going to have to wrap this in just a second. Do you think others will follow? You're the first. Do you think you'll be the last?
I'm going to make an open plea to people over the Easter recess. I want them to think in their heart of hearts, are you happy? Okay. Are you comfortable? And if you're not, come and join me. OK,
last question. I don't think I've ever seen you with an earring in before. Is this a Lib Dem
I've had it for years.
It's not a Lib Dem thing.
No, I swapped out for the diamond one I had in.
All right, listen. Jamie Green, Alex Cole-Hamilton, thank you very much indeed for being with us this morning. Now, listen, if you've got something to say or a question you want to ask our politicians, you can do it. Debate night is the place for that. We are going to be off air for the next few weeks here on the Sunday Show on the television, but debate night's coming back while we're away. They return on Wednesday, the 23rd of April. They're going to be in Inverness that night, so head to BBC Debate Night's website to apply to be in the audience if you want to get involved. Well, Jamie Green's defection wasn't the only significant change announced this week. The longest-serving party leader in modern Scottish history is to stand down after leading the Greens here for 17 years. Patrick Harvie, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Show.
After that conversation, I'm terrified you're going to ask me where Greens are pierced now.
Far be it from me. Partly because I'm terrified of the answer. Listen, why did you decide to step down as co-leader of the party now, after 17 long years?
Well, it has been a very long time, and the main thing I want to say is thank you to everybody, the thousands of Green campaigners and the hundreds of thousands of supporters around the country who've given me the chance to serve in this way. I think it's really important in the run-up to an election to consider whether the party needs a new face to join the leadership team. I think I've reflected in the press, actually, in a couple of places this weekend, that if we hadn't had the opportunity to enter government for the first time at the start of this parliamentary session, it's possible I might have made this decision a wee bit earlier, actually, because you always keep thinking, you know, is it right for me to keep in this role, or should I move on and let somebody else have a shot? I've decided now that the time is right, and I'm looking forward to hearing the ideas and the optimism and the drive and the determination of people who are putting themselves forward for the role.
Well, this is a moment for reflection, as you say, and I've read a lot of the pieces that you've contributed to in the press this week, both interviews with you and profiles of you. The one thing that comes up in all of them, I suppose, is that you're considered to be a divisive figure in Scottish politics. Would you accept that characterisation?
No, I don't think so. I think the Greens and myself as a person have always tried to seek out the common ground between political parties, work together and bring constructive ideas to bear. And I think that's got a track record of success. That's why Scotland has more progressive taxation than the rest of the UK, able to fund things like the Scottish Child Payment and free bus travel for young people. That's because Greens didn't just say, here's what we believe in, but sought out common ground with others and tried to make change happen.
I mean, somebody said of you this week, there are no shades of grey with Patrick. If you're not in lockstep with what he thinks, then you're the enemy. That's unfair, isn't it?
It doesn't sound like someone who's met me.
Well, I mean, look, Robin Harper, Andy Whiteman, both big senior figures, big intellects in your party, left because they weren't in lockstep with you. Would they agree with that characterisation, do you think?
No, I don't think there was anything personal about any of that. They each had, at different times, and I guess reached the conclusion in different ways, the conclusion that they couldn't support the party's equality policy. Policies that are adopted by our entire party membership, debated, scrutinised and voted on, and have the support of the overwhelming majority of the party. And if any member decides, as Jamie Green has decided, he can't support the current Conservative Party, then they'll have to make a decision. I'm very convinced that the Scottish Green Party's approach on equalities is the right one, and I'm very glad that there is at least one political party standing up to the modern waves of prejudice and hostility and some of the toxic values that are infecting a lot of our politics at the moment.
At this time of reflection, then, what regrets do you feel? I mean, from your own perspective, not the way our politics is going, not those predictable answers, but what particular about, you know, your party's performance, if anything, do you regret?
I think the biggest mistake that we made, and that I feel I was part of, was back in my first session, session 2 of the Scottish Parliament. We'd gone from 1 seat to 7. Explosive growth in terms of parliamentary presence, but it wasn't built on firm foundations in terms of the growth of the party in the country. And right at the start of that session, a lot of political commentators looked at the Greens and didn't really know what we're about. We hadn't built any political credibility. We spent that first couple of years building political credibility, and I think at that point we should have pivoted and said, right, now we need to build the party in the country. And by the end of that session in 2007, we had political credibility. We'd built up a great deal of respect for the way that we engage in parliamentary debate, but we hadn't built the party, its campaigning capacity out in the country. Well, and so we lost a lot of those seats. Most of those seats went down to...
Just over a decade later, quite the opposite, you found yourself in a government ministry.
Absolutely.
Do you regret the way that ended, the Bute House agreement ended? Apparently, we keep being told after an interview on that chair.
Yeah, I hugely regret the fact that Humza Yousaf decided to unilaterally pull the plug on an agreement that had locked in a progressive, pro-independence majority government, when we know how turbulent the Parliament can be without a clear majority. And, you know, I think he's reflected on the fact that whether what he did or how he did it was a mistake as well. And now, with Greens out of government, we're seeing a raft of policies, whether that's progressive climate policies, the kind of stuff that can get Scotland back on track in tackling the climate emergency, or indeed social justice policies like protecting tenants who are at the moment facing eye-watering threats of rent increases at the moment. Those temporary protections have now been scrapped altogether.
What does that tell you about the government?
That's going to cost households in Scotland far more than the hike in energy bills or the UK government's attack on the social security system.
Last question, entirely predictable question. You're moving on. Who's next? Who should replace you?
Well, I don't think you're the first person to ask, but you won't be surprised to know that I'm not going to be endorsing anyone. We don't even know who the runners and riders might be. The really important thing, though, is what are the ideas coming forward?
Should Lorna Slater stay on, your co-leader?
Lorna said she wants to restand. The party knows that she's well capable of doing that job to a high standard, but I don't think it would be right for me to start endorsing people when we don't even know who the candidates are. The question is, the party has developed immensely in its standing, in its professionalism, in its ability to deliver change. How do we continue to do that? That's the debate I want to hear amongst party members.
We will watch and listen as that debate continues. Patrick Harvie, thank you very much for this morning and all the other times you've sat in that chair, and all the best to you. That's it. I'm off for 2 or 3 weeks. See you when we get back. Here's Graham Stewart on the radio.